Emma, a 9-year-old girl, sat quietly in the corner of an orphanage holding a faded photo of her parents, as silent tears streamed down her face when she heard that Keanu Reeves would be in town. Something inside her awakened what she decided to do that night would change her life forever and his too. But what Noon could have predicted was what happened after their encounter, leaving everyone extremely anxious. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Emma was only 9 years old, yet she carried a burden in her heart that many adults would never experience since her parents' death. She'd lived with a constant ache and emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. The days at the foster home passed like gray haze, joyless, purposeless. 2 years earlier, her life had been perfect. A loving family, nights filled with laughter, games and movies that became family rituals. But everything changed. The day of the accident, Emma vividly remembered the red lights of the car approaching, her mother's scream, and then silence when she woke up in the hospital. She learned she was alone in the world. Her parents hadn't survived that. News broke something inside her, something that no amount of kindness or comforting words could seem to repair. Since then, Emma had lived in a foster home, a place that should have been safe but never felt like enough. The walls were cold. The other children indifferent, and the caregivers, though kind, couldn't feel the devastating void that consumed her soul. Why am I here, she wondered. Every night, if they're gone, why didn't I go with them? There were days when Emma could barely get out of bed. Everything felt too heavy, as though the simple act of breathing was an unbearable effort. She carried the guilt of being alive, a guilt that haunted her. Was it my fault, she often thought? If I hadn't asked to stop for ice cream that night, maybe the accident wouldn't have happened. These thoughts tormented her, especially on nights when the darkness in her room felt oppressive. Emma would cry softly, clutching the only tangible memory she had of her parents, a worn photo of the three of them smiling at a park. But even in those moments, a small flicker of hope remained. It was faint, but it was there that flicker came from. Her happy memories from the laughter she shared with her parents while watching Keanu Reeves movies. Keanu's films were more than just entertainment. For Emma, they were her anchor in a sea of sadness. When her parents were still alive, watching his movies had been a special family tradition. Her dad loved to imitate the fight scenes from The Matrix, exaggerating his moves and clumsily falling to the floor. Her mom would laugh loudly, always commenting on how charming Keanu was. These moments were so precious that even now, just thinking about them made Emma's chest tighten. Keanu Reeves had become a living reminder of what she'd lost: the love, security, and joy that once defined her life. Keanu Reeves wasn't just an actor to Emma. He was a living reminder of the love and laughter she shared with her parents. But lately, even those memories felt distant. The world around her was cruel and indifferent. Emma felt like she was slowly disappearing, as if a part of her vanished each day. One day, while helping another child at the foster home, Emma overheard two caregivers talking. Their voices were low, but she caught something that made her heart race. "Did you hear about the event? It seems Keanu Reeves will be in town this weekend." Emma immediately stopped what she was doing and focused on their conversation. One of them continued, "He's so generous, always taking time for his fans. What an incredible man." Those words ignited something in Emma, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She ran to a corner and tried to process the information. Keanu Reeves, her hero, would be in the same city as her. If I could see him just once, maybe I'd feel closer to my parents. Again, Emma thought, clutching the photo of her family to her chest, filled with determination. Emma approached Mrs. Thompson, the head caregiver at the foster home. She explained with all her heart how much it meant to her to see Keanu Reeves. But despite the sincerity in her words, the answer was a painful no. "Emma, I know this is important to you," Mrs. Thompson said with a sad expression. "But the rules are clear. We can't just leave like that." Emma pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please, Mrs. Thompson, I promise I'll behave. I've never asked for anything before, but this is too important." Despite her heartfelt appeal, Mrs. Thompson remained firm. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's just not possible. Those words felt like a knife to Emma's heart. She felt invisible, as if no one in the world understood the weight she carried that night while everyone slept. Emma made a decision that would change everything if no one was going to help her. She would do it alone. With a heavy heart and tear-filled eyes, she packed her backpack. She placed her family photo inside, along with a water bottle and a granola bar, summoning the courage for what she was about to do. She took one last look at the room where she slept, with its cold, lifeless walls, and whispered to herself, "I need to do this. I need to remember who I was when they were here." She carefully climbed out the window, feeling the chilly night air against her face walking through. The dark streets was scary, but Emma didn't hesitate. Every step she took was guided by the determination to reach something that felt unattainable. A fragment of happiness after hours of walking. Emma turned a corner and finally saw the lights of the event. When you the gathered crowd, the excited voices, everything seemed magical and surreal. He thought, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety, but doubt lingered. Will Hurley be here? Emma arrived at the event venue, with tired legs and a body chilled from the long walk, but her heart was brimming with anticipation. The bright lights, cheerful laughter, and the sounds of the excited crowd filled the air, momentarily making her forget all the hardships she had endured. To get there, clutching the metal security barrier tightly, she looked around, trying to get as close as possible to the makeshift stage. Taller people surrounded her, but Emma weaved her way through the crowd, determined to find the best spot to see him. "I made it. He's going to be here. All of this will have been worth it," she thought, her heart racing and her hands trembling with nervous excitement. The music and chatter of the crowd faded as a man with a microphone cl'd onto the stage. His serious expression and hesitant demeanor caught everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an important announcement to make." Unfortunately, Emma held her breath. Something in his tone made her grip the barrier even tighter. Keanu Reeves will not be able to attend today. He had an unexpected commitment and couldn't adjust his schedule. Emma's world stopped. The words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't process them. It couldn't be true. She blinked, hoping she'd misheard, but the murmurs of disappointment around her confirmed the reality. The crowd began to disperse slowly, but Emma remained frozen, her hands still clutching the barrier. Her gaze was fixed on the now empty stage. As the lights began to dim, "He didn't come," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'll never meet him." Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she didn't bother to wipe them away. The disappointment was so overwhelming that she could barely breathe. All the effort, the long walk in, the cold, the courage it had taken to escape the orphanage, it all felt meaningless. She looked around, watching people leave, some complaining, others shrugging off the news with indifference. But for Emma, this wasn't just about missing an event. It was her last hope of reconnecting with the love and happiness that had once existed in her life. In that moment, the pain of losing her parents came rushing back with full force. She felt the deep emptiness that never left her now heavier than ever. Why did they have to leave, she thought as she silently sobbed. And now he's not there either. I have no one. With her eyes swollen from crying, Emma began walking away from the stage. Her legs felt weaker, steps slow and dragging the backpack on. Her shoulders felt impossibly heavy. She trudged through the dark streets, directionless, feeling more alone than ever. The hope that had kept her going for so long now seemed to have vanished. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling with despair. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe I shouldn't even be here in this world. The darkness around her seemed to mirror the sadness in her soul. Tears continued to fall, and the image of her parents smiling in the photo she carried felt less comforting now, and more like a painful reminder of what she'd lost. As Emma walked through a narrow alleyway, trying to shorten her route back to the orphanage, something caught their attention. A man in a cap and dark clothes was walking ahead, attempting to stay unnoticed. He seemed familiar. Emma blinked, confused, her heart racing for the first time since she had heard the announcement. At the event, when the man turned slightly, she caught a glimpse of his face. It was him. It was Keanu Reeves. Emma froze for a moment, staring at the figure ahead of her. Was it really him? Her heart raced in her chest, the man waist-reeing to blend in, adjusting his cap to cover his face, but Emma's key eyes left. No doubt it was Keanu Reeves. Without a second thought, Emma ran toward him, shouting, "Keanu!" Keanu Reeves, the actor, stopped abruptly and turned around, surprised. His eyes met Emma's as she approached him with tears in her eyes and a hesitant smile, as though afraid this might all be a dream. "Hey, little one, are you okay? Why are you crying?" he asked, his voice gentle but cautious. He looked concerned, especially seeing her alone so late at night. Emma stopped in front of him, trying to catch her breath, and stammered through her tears, "It's you, I knew. It was you. I had to find you." Keanu knelt down to be at eye level with Emma and asked, his tone curious but full of concern, "What are you doing here? So late, are you alone?" Emma's words spilled out like a flood. She told him about the orphanage, how her parents had passed away, and how Keanu's movie had become a family tradition. She spoke of her father's playful reenactments, her mother's jokes, and how those moments were the most precious part of her life before the accident. Keanu listened attentively, not interrupting her. His eyes filled with empathy when she finished. She explained how she had run away from the orphanage to see him at the event because she desperately needed something to reconnect her to her parents. "You're not just an actor to me, Emma," said, her voice trembling. "You're a reminder of the happiest moments of my life." Keanu was visibly moved. He took a deep breath before responding, "That's really special, Emma. I'm honored to be part of those memories. Your parents sound like amazing people." Keanu guided Emma to a nearby bench so they could talk more comfortably. He sat beside her, listening intently as Emma continued to talk about her life at the orphanage and how she felt like no one truly understood her. He shared a bit of his own story, opening up about the losses he'd endured in his life. "I know how it feels to believe the world is empty without the people you love," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. The connection between them was undeniable. Keanu didn't just see a fan in Emma. He saw a resilient soul who, despite her young age, had already faced challenges that most people could never imagine. "You're really strong, Emma, and stubborn too, aren't you?" he said with a soft smile. Emma let out a small laugh, feeling understood for the first time in a long while. But as they talked, Keanu noticed Emma's face starting to pale. Her breathing seemed heavier, and tiny beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. "Emma, are you okay?" he asked, alarmed. The girl tried to smile, but her voice came out weak. I think I'm not feeling well." Keanu held Emma in his arms, feeling her body go limp. The calm demeanor he was known for had vanished, replaced with panic and urgency. He tried to rouse her. Emma, wake up, stay with me." She opened her eyes briefly, just long enough to whisper, "I feel dizzy." Keanu quickly realized something was very wrong. He looked around, searching for help, but these streets were empty. He knew he couldn't waste a second trying to stay calm. Keanu asked Emma, "What's happening? Do you have a medical condition?" With great difficulty, Emma replied, "I have diabetes, but I brought my medicine." She tried to search her backpack, but her hands were weak and trembling. Keanu helped open the bag, but there was no insulin or any other medication inside. Emma's eyes filled with fear as she whispered, "I left it at the orphanage." Before Keanu could respond, Emma's breathing became labored, her body went completely limp, and her eyes closed. "Emma, don't do this to me," Keanu shouted, holding her tightly, without hesitation. He turned to his assistant, who was waiting nearby in a parked car. "Call the nearest hospital." "No," we ordered, running toward the vehicle. With Emma in his arms, Tanu placed Emma in the back seat of the car, cradling her carefully as the driver sped through the city streets. During the frantic drive, Keanu spoke to her, desperate to keep her conscious. "Emma, stay with me. You're strong, remember? Stubborn and determined. You can't give up now." The assistant informed the hospital of their impending arrival and described the situation. Keanu kept his eyes fixed on Emma, his worry intensifying with each shallow breath she took. As soon as they arrived at the hospital, Keanu rushed out of the car, with Emma in his arms, shouting at the staff near the entrance, "Help, she's unconscious and she has diabetes. Please do something." Doctors and nurses quickly sprang into action, placing Emma on a stretcher and wheeling her into the emergency room. Keanu tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped him, saying, "You can't "Come in, sir, we need to treat her now." He nodded, stepping back, but stood frozen in front of the closing door, feeling utterly powerless. Keanu sat in the waiting room, his head in his hands, the image of Emma fainting. His arms replayed in his mind over and over. Though he had faced challenges and tragedies in his own life, nothing had prepared him for the desperation of seeing such a young and brave child in danger. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Minutes dragged on like hours, and each time a door opened. He looked up, hoping for news. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a doctor approached. His expression was serious, but not hopeless. "We've done the best we could. We managed to stabilize her, but now we just have to wait and see how she responds." "The doctor," said Keanu, took a deep breath, trying to process the words. He glanced toward the door of the room where Emma lay and murmured to himself, "You're going to get through this, kid. I know you will." The hospital room was silent, softly lit by the morning sunlight streaming through the window. Emma slowly opened her eyes, feeling weak but alert. Her vision was still a little blurry, but she soon saw a familiar figure sitting beside her bed, Keanu Reeves. He was leaning back in a chair, his eyes tired but filled with relief as he noticed Emma was awake when she tried to move. Keanu leaned forward, smiling gently. "Good morning, little one. Said you gave us quite a scare." Emma blinked a few times, confused. She looked around the room and then at Keanu, wondering if she might still be dreaming. "I'm in the hospital and you're still here?" she asked, her voice weak. Keanu chuckled softly. "Yes, you're in the hospital. And of course I'm still here. I told you I wouldn't leave you, remember?" Tears began to well up in Emma's eyes. She whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for not abandoning me." Not long after, Mrs. Thompson, the caregiver from the foster home, entered the room with a worried expression. When she saw Emma awake, she let out a sigh of relief. "Emma, you're okay," she said, rushing to her side. And holding her hand, she then turned to Keanu, her gratitude evident in her voice. "I don't even know how to thank you for what you've done. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened." Keanu smiled modestly and replied, "Emma did all the hard work. She's stubborn and determined. I just did what anyone would have done." As they spoke, Mrs. Thompson began explaining Emma's health condition to Keanu. Emma has type 1 diabetes. It's a condition that requires constant attention and regular medication. Unfortunately, it has made her adoption process much more challenging. Families are often afraid of the medical costs involved. Emma looked down at the floor, embarrassed, but Keanu leaned closer and gently held her hand. "This is not your fault, Emma. It's not something you chose. And it should never be something that stops you from having a family who loves you." Keanu looked at Mrs. Thompson, his expression serious and resolute. "If the issue is the medical costs, maybe I can help with that." Both Emma and Mrs. Thompson stared at him, surprised and hopeful, but unsure of what exactly he meant. Keanu looked at Emma still lying in the hospital bed, then at Mrs. Thompson. His tone was firm but filled with empathy. "I can't change her past, but I can make sure her future is a little easier. I want to cover all of Emma's medical expenses, every single one, for life." Mrs. Thompson blinked in disbelief. "Mr. Reeves, that's an incredibly generous gesture, but it's a huge commitment." Keanu smiled faintly and replied, "I have their sources, and it's the least I can do for someone so brave. Emma deserves the chance to have a full life without something as simple as money standing in her way." Emma, still confused, looked at him. "You're saying you're going to take care of me even if I go to another family?" she asked hesitantly. Keanu leaned in, holding her hand, and said, "Yes, little one. No matter where you are, I'll make sure you have everything you need to live well. You deserve that." In the days that followed, Keanu worked with the hospital, and Mrs. Thompson to establish a specific fund for Emma. He ensured that all her medical expenses, from purchasing insulin to regular checkups and emergency care, would be fully covered. Mrs. Thompson was astonished by Keanu's dedication. He not only financed the fund, but also took the time to meet the doctors and understand Emma's treatment plan. "I want to make sure she gets the best care possible," he said. While carefully reviewing her medical reports a day before Emma was discharged from the hospital, Keanu had a heartfelt conversation with her sitting beside her bed. He looked into her eyes and said, "Emma, you're stubborn, determined, and incredibly brave. Those are your greatest strengths. Never let anyone tell you they're wise, okay?" Emma smiled shyly, but her expression was filled with admiration. "Do you really think I'm strong?" Keanu nodded. "Absolutely, you've been through so much and you're still here fighting. That's something not everyone can do. You have a bright future." Emma, use your stubbornness to chase your dreams. With the medical expenses resolved, Emma's adoption became much more feasible. Mrs. Thompson shared the news that a family had already expressed interest in meeting her, but had hesitated because of the financial burden. Now, with the fund Keanu had created, that concern had been eliminated. "They're wonderful people, Emma," Mrs. Thompson said. "I'm sure they'll love you." Emma clutched the note Keanu had left in her hand, reading the words over and over. "Keep being strong and determined. The world is yours. Emma." Keanu was. Emma waited. Anxiously, the door to her room opened and a new family entered. With warm smiles, they carried flowers, and a stuffed animal looking nervous but genuinely happy to meet her. Emma looked at them, her heart racing, and thought, "Will they like me?" Emma's eyes were fixed on the new family that had just entered her hospital room. A woman and a man, both smiling gently, appeared nervous as they approached her. The woman held a bouquet of colorful flowers and the man carried a teddy bear, as if trying to break these. "Hello, Emma," the woman said softly. "My name is Sarah, and this is my husband, Tom. We've been very excited to meet you." Emma looked at them cautiously, but there was something comforting in their voices and the way they looked at her, as if she were the most important person in the world. Tom extended the teddy bear to Emma, smiling timidly. "We hope you like this. We thought he could be your companion while you rest," he said. Emma carefully took the teddy bear, staring at it for a moment before replying quietly, "Thank you." The following days were full of changes for Emma. She was discharged from the hospital and taken to her new home. A cozy place with walls painted in cheerful colors and a room decorated just for her. Sarah and Tom made every effort to show that she was welcome. They helped her feel comfortable, always attentive to her needs and respecting the time she needed to adjust. Still, a lingering worry whetted Emma's mind. What if they change their minds? What if I'm not good enough for them? She thought. Her insecurities creeping in one quiet afternoon while Sarah prepared dinner and Tom assembled a bookshelf in her room. Emma sat at her desk and began writing a letter to Keanu. Wanted to thank him for everything he had done and share how her new life was going. "Dear Keanu, thank you for helping me when I needed it the most. You gave me more than medicine or money. You gave me hope and a new chance to have a family. Sarah and Tom are very nice. They let me choose the decorations for my room, and now I have a new teddy bear that I named Nao after you. I promise I'll use my stubbornness to be strong and achieve all my dreams, just like you said. With love, Emma." As Emma folded the letter and placed it in an envelope to send, she looked at a photo taken in the hospital where she stood next to Keanu. In the picture, she held the note he had left for her. The words now etched in her heart as her mantra: "Keep being strong and determined. The world is yours, Emma." With a lighter heart, she smiled. For the first time since losing her parents, she felt like she had found a home. Sometimes all it takes to change someone's life is an act of kindness. Be the difference in someone's life. If you enjoyed the story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience. Music.